Hello, welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we're going to learn about subtracting decimals. How do we subtract decimals? Line up the decimal points. Subtract the columns from right to left, regrouping if necessary. Place a decimal point in the answer directly below other decimal points. In example number 1, we have 0.86 minus 0.49. So let us go over to the whiteboard and work this one out in detail.
In example number 1, we have 0.86 minus 0.49. We want to put the first number on the top, 0.86, and while we're doing it, we're lining up those decimal points, 0.49. Now, we can't just subtract, we just have to borrow from here. And there we have 16 minus 9, because we have to subtract, and we get 7. And because we borrowed, the 8 becomes a 7, so it's 7 minus 4, and that gives us 3. And then point, because we bring down the decimal point, and we have 0.37.
Reviewing what I just did on the whiteboard, we put the first number on the top of the second number and line up the decimal points. So here we do that, and we regroup the tenths and subtract the columns. So 6 minus 9 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the 8 to get 16, and that will give us 7 in that column. So now we can subtract 16 minus 9 to get 7, 7 minus 4 to get 3, and then 0 minus 0 is just 0. So we end up by bringing the decimal point down. See how the decimal points line up? We end up with 0.37 as our final answer. So different signs take difference. In example number 2, we have 5.34 minus 2.08. Let us go over to the whiteboard and work this one out in detail.
In example number 2, we have 5.34 minus 2.08. Again, we put the first one on the top, lining up the decimals, and the second one on the bottom, and subtract. And we subtract as usual, like I did in the previous example. I have 4 minus 8. Well, we can't do that, so we have to borrow from here, and we have 14 minus 8. And that will give us 6. And then we have 2 minus 0, and that will give us 2. And then we have 5 minus 2, and that will give us 3. And note how I bring down the decimal point to give me 3.26 as my final answer.
Reviewing what we just did on the whiteboard, put the first number on the top of the second number and line up the decimals. So here we did that, and there we line up the decimals. And then we subtract as usual. Since the 4 is smaller than the 8, we have to borrow from the 3, so that we have 14 minus 8, and then we have 2 minus 0. So 14 minus 8 is 6. 2 minus 0 is 2. We bring down the decimal. 5 minus 2 is 3. We end up with 3.26 as our final answer. In example number 3, we have 28 minus 15.911. So let us go over to the whiteboard and see how to work this one out.
In example number 3, I have 28 minus 15.911. As before, I put the first one on the top, but even though it doesn't have a decimal point, I will add the decimal point and put 2 zeros behind it so we know what we're subtracting from. And then we have 15.911. So we have 0 minus 1. Well, that's not possible. We can't borrow from here. We can't borrow from here. So we borrow from here. So now we have 10 minus 1 gives us 9. 9 minus 1 gives us 8. And 9 minus 9 gives us 0. We bring down our decimal point, lining it up. Then we have 7 minus 5 gives us 2. And then 2 minus 1 gives us 1. And this is our final answer, 12.089.
Reviewing what we just did on the whiteboard. When there is not a decimal, put 1 behind the number. Add zeros to line up everything, and then subtract. So here we have to borrow from the 8, and 8 becomes 7, and then this becomes 10 and then 9, and then this becomes 10 and then 9, and this is 10 minus 1, which gives us 9. 9 minus 1 gives us 8. 9 minus 9 gives us 0. 7 minus 5 gives us 2. And 2 minus 1 gives us 1. So we end up with 12.089 as our final answer. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Be well and take care.